Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Crickelectuals. This is Rufan along with Jay. Jay, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. Just been dying to kind of talk about PSL and stuff. How have you been?
I'm good, man. Weather's finally starting to change to summer, spring days. We're getting 70-degree weather each day, and at the same time having some PSL withdrawals. As you know,
Yeah,
we don't get to watch the entire match because it comes on during work hours. But it was exciting times, and every time you got distracted or got a break, you were checking scores or putting highlights on or going on TikTok to see what's going on. And I'm definitely having some withdrawal symptoms and missing that.
same here, man. The games that happen during the week obviously are definitely harder to keep up with, but the weekend games were not as hard to watch and keep up with. So, luckily the final was on a Sunday. I got to watch that game fully, and great game it was. And during the week, were just some thrilling outcomes happening between Lahore and Islamabad United game, for example. That was fun. Islamabad United and Peshawar Zalmi game. That was fun. So, yeah, keeping up. The tournament got pretty exciting as we got along, and that's what I want to talk about today, right?
Mostly, yeah, PSL, and let's see what it leads to. We'll add a couple more items, but first and foremost, we got to talk about the final, man. We talk about Lahore Qalandars finally getting the title in. How was your experience watching that, and were you surprised how well Lahore played and completely dismantled Multan Sultans?
Yeah, the final looked like it was pretty one-sided, and my predictions have mostly been wrong on PSL, but in this particular case, I had predicted that Lahore, being the only team that had beaten Multan Sultans, will beat them again, and I felt that given the momentum that they were bringing in, they just looked like a more sort of a passionate side, and Multan Sultan always looked like more of a technical kind of side, that the kind of side that Pakistan international team has, or the national team has recently been under Babur's captaincy. They've been very clinical and methodical around how they chase scores and how they set big totals, and sometimes not too big totals but just the right amount. And Multan Sultans as a team were operating like that. They were doing what needed to be done to always win. They always usually outplanned other teams and performed very consistently. So I do think they were a better team, and I would have been very happy if they won as well. It was well deserved. After all, they only lost in the whole tournament, playing 12 games. They lost only two, and both of those to Lahore Qalandars. So that
Yeah.
speaks volumes to their abilities and the captaincy of Rizwan, and just the combination that Multan Sultans landed on. And on the other side, on Lahore side, I just felt like because of the win that they had with Islamabad United in the final eliminator and the way in which they entered the final, they were looking like they were going to be unstoppable. Just the momentum, and they have the players who really just, uh, you know, get really passionate about the game. People like Harshrov, Shaheen Shafridi, for them, it looks like their emotions get pretty strongly involved in the game, and most of the times that can be detrimental to their performance. But in certain big games, that emotional kick that you get is often the difference between a winning and a losing side. So I think that's where they brought the right energy on that day, and they went for it.
Yeah. So we often compare Lahore's team to our national Pakistan team, and I think they definitely fought in the same manner. And previously, when Pakistan was losing internationally, so was Lahore in previous PSL seasons. And I agree with you. I sort of saw that coming. Lahore was the only team that beat Multan, and in the first qualifier, they lost again, and the competition was set. Man, these are the teams that earned their ranks in the
For
final.
sure.
Obviously, they were ranked number 1 and 2 throughout the tournament, and the only team that had beaten Multan Sultans was Lahore Qalandars, and also the only team Karachi had beaten was Lahore Qalandars. So it's very like Pakistan type of performance where
Yeah.
they're very unpredictable. Anything can happen, and the stage was set. They had faced each other 3 times in the tournament, and Lahore before the final had lost two to Multan Sultans. So they even the head-to-head count, and had the momentum, like you said, in their side. And when they came into final, I think Multan Sultan's players knew they were going to face some challenging bowling and batting. And what a performance from David Wisa. Both matches, last over, he scored 28 runs. And I think that was what changed their eliminator two against Islamabad. And that extra score at the end was definitely the factor where the score went from where it should have been in the final. And he made a huge difference, in my opinion. And of course, Hafiz, what an all-round performance from him. I think he took 2 wickets and a 60-something score. It was awesome performance. So it's definitely was Lahore's match to win, and they definitely showed it and took it from there. And congratulations to the 21-year-old first-time captain, Shaheen Shah Afridi, man. Everybody's
Where does he
talking
go
about
from
him.
here?
Obviously, some people are silly enough to say he should be the captain of Pakistan
Of
cricket
course.
team.
The casuals, the casual
the,
fans.
the casual fans, the temporary high we talked about. But I definitely see a good pipeline. You know, we always saw talent, whether it's batting or bowling, but never saw a pipeline of such good captains. And I think that's what local leagues do to a team. You know, we got obviously Rizwan. Babar Azam is already the captain. Then you got Shaheen Shah Afridi, who's at the right age at the right moment, man. So maybe 5, 6 years from now on, he could be vice captain, or maybe earlier. You never know. But we definitely have some talent, and he's got the experience down. While you got, the others, Wahab Riaz, he's at the edge of retirement. So is Sarfaraz. So we need some heads there that can run a team and have had experience under their belts. So that's definitely good to see.
I think that's a good point because, I like to think about it in terms of the creation and formation of and development of new stars as opposed to new captains. I think it's too early for people to suggest that, because X person captained this
Yeah.
small league team that all of a sudden they should captain a national team because they were successful. We've been getting that about Rizwan for a while, and now we're getting it about Shaheen. And I kind of think it can lead to a negative outcome for the team because in some ways, like, you don't want to spread these kinds of things so much that it gets in the heads of players. Then they do have to all play together under one person's leadership. And in Pakistan team, unfortunately, we've had things in the past where this sort of thing has happened, where multiple people have felt they should be the captain, and then there's, firqa wariyat. they got clans and things going on, and unfortunately, that's not healthy. Yeah. So this bunch doesn't look like they're at that stage where their egos are that big. I don't see Rizwan ever getting to that stage, but when you have so many people saying so many other people should be captain, that just puts a lot of pressure on the actual captain of the national side, who's also young, who's also only been a captain for 2 years, a year and a half, and it's just not a healthy thing to be putting out there. So I just hope that we stop with it now that the PSL is over, and let's not say too much of that. But what we should be saying, I think, is that look how many stars are born, and or have proven themselves. It's really nice to have that. Now in Pakistan, we have so many stars. We got Babar Azam, we got Shaheen Shah Afridi, we got Mohammad Rizwan, we have Haris Rauf. I mean, the list of stars, of big time stars. We haven't had this kind of thing since I guess one of those Afridi teams we had, or even when we had Yunus Khan, we had Yusuf. We had so many big name stars, and I think we're finally getting to that. Finally, we have a team where there's some consistent names that are always there, names that don't just show up for a series and then are forgotten, but names that are consistently there and are consistently performing and are becoming household names. So I think that's good for the team, and especially going into the T20 World Cup coming up again at the end of the year. If we go in with a similar team with most of the players being the same big name players, that's a good sign for Pakistan.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think, especially our youngsters, when they assign them to run, let's say, a tournament and they assign them a team, they make them captains, they need to start thinking about these as small little projects
Yes.
and build your resume up. So, kind of like directors, Steven Spielberg, he made E.T. Now he's not trying to top that movie. He moved on to another subject matter and he did it just as good. So consistency matters,
Yep.
but it doesn't have to be as good. If we can rewire their brains to know, yes, you did good. That was one project. You got the box checked. Move on. There are other projects. You may not be in the
Exactly.
same capacity, but performance is necessary. But it's a totally different subject matter. This is what you do, and I think Barber is in that sort of space. I hope what I've seen in the past, where when he did lose a series, he moved on. You
Yep.
start with a clean slate. You just do what you do best and keep on moving up and collecting these coins and move forward.
That's right.
What we do is we just want to be at that elite status from beginning to the end, and that's not very healthy. And I think that's what happened with Sarfaraz. He did well. I constantly find him trying to prove himself as a captain, but if you look at his history, under 19 World Cup, the only time we won that was under his captaincy. We won the Champions League, right? Champions Trophy.
Yep.
That's job well done. I mean, if you
Yep.
look at Dhoni, he's got so many titles under him, and then he played under Virat Kohli's captaincy for 5 6 years, and I think that's the type of mind frame we gotta be in. Shaheen is only 21 years old. I hope he really just puts that behind him and just moves forward and
Yeah.
focuses where he's good at, and that's bowling.
Yeah, totally agree. I think similar way kind of thinking kind of happens when we, not we, you and I, but a lot of times in just mainstream social media, especially, we hear comparisons between certain players, right? Like Virat Kohli and Babar Azam. Like it's too early to even compare to say things like that. And I think, because it's a spicy topic, a lot of people get into the conversation. But I think it's better to be more cautious about making such comparisons, whether it's between Pakistani players or players across the border, because we should just be patient and let people build their resume and prove themselves for a while and not get overexcited by just one performance. That seems to be a trend in a lot of our cricket fandom. We get one performance and everybody just hops on the bandwagon and just goes a little too far into to that and starts feeling that a little too much, and then we're
Yeah.
disappointed later because that person under pressure was taken to the next level and then they didn't perform there. So it's better to not have that many expectations and just wait and let people perform at different levels in various different projects, like you said, and see what happens from there. Having said that now that the PSL is all over, what are some of your big takeaways about the success of PSL? What are some things that went well for you this PSL, and what are some things that PSL should improve, whether it's PSL management or just like how teams perform in PSL?
I think overall it was very successful. If I compare these to the previous PSL events we had multiple countries broadcasting PSL finally. It's considered the second biggest league in the world. And if you do the comparison with the other one, which is IPL, I think it's the biggest league in the world for as far as the success is concerned and how much budget we had to work around with. For example, I think PSL altogether is worth 330 something $1 million,
Hmm.
and IPL, their one team is $1.5 billion, and that's a
Wow.
huge difference. That's just
Of
one
course.
team. So against the whole PSL, so that's the most successful part of the whole tournament. I'm glad that we're finally known. The whole tournament happened in Pakistan. That's another factor. I think we did half of it in Dubai, and just the playoffs and finals in Lahore or Karachi in the past.
Yeah.
Second thing I want to mention is how much we've got in our pipeline now. Not just bowling unit, it's a lot of batsmen, which we usually don't see. And there were a number of new emerging players that I haven't seen or heard about that I saw are promising, whether Test cricket, T20, or ODI. And lastly, how everybody is so friendly with each other, even when they show one-off situation. As you saw Shaheen, right? He threw the ball back at Rizwan, to get him, out a couple of times, and Rizwan sort of threw him a air hug. It happened again in the final, and Rizwan smiled, and they all hug it out at the end. And that type of, bond and friendship I haven't seen in Pakistan cricket. So there's something that's been taught and going around. The dressing room environment is extremely good and healthy, which is great. Problems, I would go back to Karachi and their crowd issues, because the dynamics when PSL moved to Lahore completely changed, man. It became so much more energetic and
Totally, man.
exciting, and it really felt like cricket is finally back home. And it was awesome to see the crowd roar each
Yeah.
time, back up their teams, and the celebration we saw after Lahore Qalandars won in Lahore. That's something you see after Soccer World Cup, quite honestly. When we come out
Right.
here in
It was
Times Square
amazing.
and celebrate, that type of environment I
I
saw.
don't think I've ever seen that in Pakistan in my life. I think that was the first time I saw like celebrations at that level on
Yeah,
cricket.
I think it was just a withdrawal of not having cricket in
Uh-huh.
Pakistan, and I think these younger generation, they're not as big cricket fanatics as we were, because that's all we had. Now they
Yeah.
have all these channels. We were just running on PTV all the time, right?
Yeah.
We didn't even have exposure to other sports. Every now and then we would hear about Michael Jordan or whatever, but we didn't really watch him play, right?
Mhm.
And so this was completely new to the newer generation, that type of fun and excitement. It's sort of like what Bangladesh went through when their cricket team beat Pakistan, right? That was the first world-renowned sports team that they had to celebrate, and the emotions get the better of you at that time, because it's something you've never felt, right? You
Yeah.
always celebrated other countries that you backed up. And the last thing I would mention, get all the cities involved. You mentioned that we're going to add a couple more teams. Let's take PSL around Pakistan, every city, every state, and get crowd all riled up and excited, and let's do this all over Pakistan.
That sounds great. And I heard Ramiz Raja make that announcement informally in one of the interviews that he had just recently given. And he did say that they want to try to bring some games down to other franchise homes as well. And there was also definitely talk about adding a couple more teams. That all just depends on profits that were generated from this PSL, and that seems to be a topic of kind of confusion right now. Ramiz made some statements about them making profits before the first ball was even bowled in the final. That sounds, it was a full house. It was a sold out stadium for the final. So sounds like that's a good thing, but we don't know the details yet. At the same time, a couple of the franchise owners, they gave statements that we actually still don't have our finances settled from PSL 6, so I don't know what Ramiz Raj is talking about for PSL 7's profits yet. So maybe another premature statement from Ramiz, but he must know something to have said it. I don't think he just makes things up, obviously.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll all be settled. I do hope Ramiz is right about the profits that are made, and I do hope the franchise owners get that money and finances settled, because that's very important. They need to make the money to feel like they can invest more, and we won't get more franchises if the existing franchises don't feel like their finances are taken care of. So hopefully the success leads and translates into financial success for all the franchises as well, because that's just healthy for the team.
Yeah, more teams, more stadiums, more cities. What other cities do you recommend should be part of PSL?
I think Multan and Quetta should be good, right? I think.
I'm talking about the new teams.
Oh, you're
What
talking
new
new
cities?
teams. Yeah, well,
New franchises.
Faisalabad is one that has, and Faisalabad has a Taipal cricket league scene. They have lots of people coming out of there, and they produce some good talent there. So that'd be cool. And Sialkot is another one. We've had some pretty good players from Sialkot, and I would think at least those two should have their teams. And I'm sure if you just focus on Greater Sindh, because right now we have Karachi Kings, but if you look at outside of Karachi, Greater Sindh area, I don't know if there's a team there that can be made out, if there's enough talent out there. But I think if it would be good for Pakistan and for Sindh to have another team.
The way the teams are set up, it's not like you have all Karachi players playing
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah, of
Karachi.
course.
It's definitely important to get the right players from the right region where the interest is. But at the same time, I think we do have to, people do take sides. That's what makes it exciting, right? So you want to back up your local team or whatever. So I think maybe go with other provinces instead of Punjab this time, just to make it more even. I know Faisalabad is a big city, big fan base, is going to generate a lot of revenues. But just for the sake of argument, maybe what other cities in Sindh? There's a few. We can talk about. Hyderabad is one. It has a big population too. What about Kashmir's team, man? That's gonna be a political nightmare for our neighbors. But I think we need to generate some interest in Kashmir region and have them back up a team and get excited about something.
I think that Kashmir idea is really great. I just, again, there's a financial side to this, and that's the harder part. I think if it was just as simple as putting teams together in regions, then it would easily work out. But, given that Kashmir has its own league right now, they're probably trying to promote that league. And I know Shahid Afridi was there trying to promote that league. A lot of big players were there. Shoaib Akhtar was there trying to promote that league. A lot of our national team players went there to promote that league. So that league is trying to be its own thing and to generate its own revenue for Kashmir. So I think that's harder to do, but I hope that they can create a team that can be a part of PSL as well. Didn't Zaman Khan come from there?
Yeah, you may be right.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
Zaman
sure.
Khan was in the Kashmir Premier League. He's from there. And the nicer part is also about just like some of the players that came up. For me, one of the positives of this PSL was, like you were saying, like so many players in the pipeline while I was watching some of the games. And here's some of the names. I'm just going to throw them out. We don't have to talk about them, just some names for us to kind of remember.
Go for it.
We got Qasim Akram. He played for the Kings. We have Zaman Khan for Qalandars. We had Zishan Zamir from Islamabad United. And Waqas Maqsood from Islamabad United. Haris from Zalmi. I think it was Muhammad Haris's full name.
Yes.
Then we had Muhammad Umar. And Muhammad Haris was, by the way, he was a wicket keeper, I believe. Then we had Muhammad Umar and Salman Irshad, who was also the Zalmi bowler. So those are some names that I wrote down that had really good performances in at least one of the games where their names popped up. I didn't know any of these players, so that was cool to see.
Yeah, Muhammad Haris for me was definitely had the right mind frame and very calm and collected.
He's the batter, right?
He's the batter, man. He was pretty good. So he definitely impressed me. The way he talked, his story that he talked about. He was left behind in 5 different tryouts, and he finally made it, and won a couple of trophies here and there locally, and he was a very experienced player. I mean, T20, anything can happen. You have pressure, but I think he would be a better fit in the ODI environment because his shots were ground shots, and he was playing some book cricket. So that's definitely one of the names that you mentioned that outshines the other.
Yeah, and Salman Irshad, the bowler, was also impressive. I think in the last couple of games, with that last game against Islamabad United that Zalmi had, he was throwing some of those in-swinging Yorkers, and that was really impressive because that
Shoaib
looked
Akhtar style. Did you see the one that went right between somebody's legs and he got him bowled? It was pretty impressive.
I just felt like, I don't know, it reminded me of Gar Yunus too. I was like, this kind of in-swinging bowling I hadn't seen in a long time, since Shoaib Akhtar actually. But so that was really nice to see. And overall, the PCB collaborated really well with the franchises, and everything went really well, especially around COVID protocols. Man, I was one of the things I was worried about is how they're gonna be able to manage, the whole bubble thing. And from what we're hearing from the Big Bash League from Australia, once all the players got there, they had this big surge of COVID. I remember a lot of players were constantly being shuffled in and out of teams right at the beginning. And we had a couple of those moments at the beginning too. There were some disruptions, but really they didn't disrupt the actual tournament. So it was nice that it was planned in a way, in a thoughtful enough way that there were enough players available, and when changes need to be made, they were made very quickly, and the tournament went on without much trouble.
I think it was Salman, but explaining how the setup was done for these teams. I think all teams had 8 to 11 reserves. So if the whole team had to be taken out, whether for injuries or COVID, they had enough people in the reserves to replace the entire team. So that's something that's never been thought of before. So that's something that should be implemented across all formats as long as COVID is around, just to make sure the competition goes on, it's consistent, and there's no breaks in between. So that was another good thing we should have mentioned about PSL when it started. But I just heard Salman but explain that to someone in one of the shows, and I thought that was very impressive.
Just to wrap things up, we've had quite an interesting conversation today. Pakistan-Australia series, you have your initial thoughts right now? I'm sure we'll talk more about the series as the series proceeds, but it started on the 4th. On Friday is the first game in Rawalpindi, and Pakistan has taken a hit already. We've lost players. Hassan Ali is injured, and now we have Haris Rauf with COVID. So that kind of hurts our bowling especially, right?
Yeah, I'm actually, yeah, these are definitely valuable players, but we do have enough in the pipeline, especially in the test squad. So I'm not too worried. But as far as head-to-head competition is concerned, I think Australia just demolishes Pakistan. I don't know how many matches they played. I think our win ratio against them is like 25% or something. I think you did a video with the exact stats, which I don't have in front of me. But to be honest, I'm a bit nervous. I
Yeah.
give this 50-50 Australia or Pakistan. But you know how Australia plays. They just go out and they do their thing in increments of what they need to do. And they don't look at the overall result. And they do good one session after another. And they're strategically very strong, always been. But home turf advantage is for Pakistan, but I'm still a little bit anxious. So hopefully it goes well. But if we tie the test series, I think that's a good result. And the better result out of the whole tournament is that Australia finally set foot in Pakistan. So that's the bigger news.
That's a big win. So yeah, you talked about the stats, and I was just pulling them up again. So we have 66 test matches played between the two countries, and 15 were won by Pakistan, 33 by Australia, and 18 of the matches were drawn. So Pakistan, yeah, very low win-loss ratio there for Pakistan, unfortunately. And my initial thought was Pakistan was gonna win the first game because of the surprise factor. Been a long time. Australia hasn't been around. Pakistan's played there a lot more. Obviously, home ground advantage, and players don't have to acclimatize. The whole bubble thing. They've already been playing for a while, so it's unlike Australia, who've kind of taken a break and kind of coming together and traveling and all of that, and they haven't faced some of the Pakistani test side before. So a lot of it is very new to them. So, but there's some factors that are definitely going against Pakistan, at least in the first match. Now that we've lost the 3 players we mentioned before, and the replacements are going to be Mohammad Wasim Jr. and Naseem Shah. They're going to be coming into the squad. And yeah, I think it's a different kind of a team. And Babar Azam's mental state, we talked about that earlier. Also, not sure if he's, after that Karachi season he just had, we don't know where he's going to be at. But hopefully, like you said before, he's able to transition out of that and switch gears into this test game. And, the team is preparing. But what I appreciate about Australia is that they seem to be showing a lot of respect to Pakistan right now. Their players are talking like they have a lot of respect for the Pakistani players. And the way some of them have been preparing for Pakistan, they've been very vocal about how they've been preparing for Pakistan. So it sounds like each one of them, each player individually, has done their homework to play better against Pakistan when they arrive here. With Labuschane's made-up pitch, we saw Instagram videos
that was
of
very
that.
interesting.
I mean, there's a couple of players who are doing things like that from the Australian squad. So that tells me that they have a lot of respect for Pakistan. They're taking it very seriously. They don't think that's going to be an easy series for them, and I don't think it is. And right now I think the Pakistan chips are down, given these recent developments with the players excluded and new additions. So now I think Australia is looking stronger to me, but let's see what happens.
Yeah, man. Best of luck. And I think that's all we have, Jay, for today.
That's right, and we'll talk more again next week. Thanks everybody for joining us in this episode, and see you next time. Jay and Rafan signing out. Peace.